So, David, why did we decide to offer the annual review?
Well, year ends are natural times to reflect and to think about where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. And this year in particular is an important transition phase because we're moving into a new decade and we're beginning to see an explosion of what new tools and new capabilities in the world, but it's also a bit of a confusing time, and we want to give people some space to reflect, plan, and prepare for the upcoming year, the upcoming decade.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of thinking of it. There's this thing called liminal thinking. I haven't actually read the book, but I've seen it tweeted. And it's this idea that there's this sort of space in between things. Like the example I love is right when you wake up. You know, there's that like little moment, that little sliver where you're not quite sleeping and not quite waking. And you can have ideas that you would never otherwise have. Emotions, memories come up, dreams, visions. It's like this kind of magical time in between waking and sleeping. And I kind of feel like this first week of the year, this is why we scheduled it for the first weekend of the year, January 4th and 5th, is kind of like that, but on a much bigger scale. It's like the holidays end, suddenly you're like, oh, there's no more like holiday, parties and things scheduled, but it's like almost like the new year is getting going, the gears are starting to turn, and that's this like key moment where you can make these real shifts that impact the rest of the year and the decade.
I think this is really important here that there's also a constraint on the annual review. I've seen a lot of people who try to do it on their own. The annual review ends up dragging on. And one thing that is really helpful is to actually start and finish this in a weekend. You actually get disproportionate benefits for compressing the entire annual review session into a weekend and for having certain people who you can go through this experience with. And the more compressed and intense it is in a small window, if you can start and finish it, that's when the annual review really becomes beneficial.
Yeah. What do you think are some things that people miss or don't understand about doing an annual review?
The importance of conversations, where it's easy the classic annual review is just to go into a cabin in the woods on your own and to not talk to anybody. But what you want is both solitude and collaboration. But the wisdom in the retreat is the dedicated space for the annual review. And so what we're saying is we're going to give you the space and the time, Saturday, January 4th, Sunday, January 5th, and then throughout that weekend, actually swing between both sides of the hammock of strong collaboration and then also strong solitude. And through that process, a space to reflect and have new epiphanies on where you are.
Totally. I would say one thing people miss too is that it's just as important to look back as look forward. Sometimes I see people think, and often it comes from, maybe last year wasn't what they wanted it to be. They didn't reach the goals they set last year. They didn't keep the resolution. Yeah. So they kind of go, oh, let's just, kind of wipe that slate clean and put it under the rug. But the fact is that there's lessons learned. There's patterns in the past year, especially, that are still fresh enough in your mind that you can be, okay, this is what I discovered. This is what I'm going to change. As well as little hints. I often find my future goals and projects and ambitions and dreams, there's hints of them years before.
Yes.
I can look back to college and there was a class I took on, operations management, the most boring class you can possibly take. Mm-hmm. But I would hear about Kanban and about the theory of constraints and about Toyota, and it had this disproportionate impact. Well, more than 10 years later, here I am obsessed with those things. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if I'd taken the time back then to really notice what I was noticing, notice what was exciting me, if I could have kind of either moved faster or just been aware of that sooner.
It's a meditation. That's what an annual review is.
Yeah.
Meditation is a space to stop and to listen to the ideas inside of your brain and to let go of the stimulus that we're always actually in the middle of that swirl of stimuli. And usually the world is so dizzying. There's tweets to read, there's emails to respond to, and every year you get basically a 2-week period from Christmas to then that first full week after the new year. And it's the only time out of the year where you're not expected to reply. It's the only time out of the year where it's actually assumed that you could be meditative. And what we are doing, because we've done this year after year, we've we've found a method that works, that scales. And what we're doing here is saying, come join us, come join our group. And together, we are going to give each other the structure and the accountability to meditate together.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through some of the ways that we think maybe differently or uniquely about this process. One that comes to mind is the importance of borrowing. Like even more than usual. We're all about borrowing ideas and getting inspiration from many sources. But when it comes to goals, there's something really powerful about our social conditioning that we don't allow ourselves sometimes to have the courage to say commit to a goal or commit to an ambition until we see someone like us, someone that we can see ourselves in committing to that first. Which is why it's awesome at the end of every year, you see all these people sharing their reviews. Yeah. One of the things we're going to share in the course, I have an Evernote notebook full of these things that I've collected for years. You're going to see annual reviews from many of the most successful writers and creators and entrepreneurs out there. And you can just go through their outcomes, what they produced in these reviews, and be like, okay, I'll take that, I'll have that, this principle, this value, I'll take this part of their mission statement, make it part of my own. And it's almost like we piece together our lives kind of, or our identities, not out of thin air or from abstractions, but from other people's lives where they're lived kind of in the flesh.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And then also to actually go back through the archives of our own work to piece together, who are we? Why are we here? What are we working on? What do we believe in? And actually having a process to go back through what are the things that we've written, the photos that we've taken, the people that we've spent time with, and to think, how do we want to spend our time, and how do we align our energy and our attention with the people that we want to be and the work that we want to do in this world.
Let's talk a little bit about the logistics of the course. I think we kind of mentioned that we're doing it all in one weekend, just so there's a firm starting and end point. I know a lot of people who they invent this very elaborate process that's going to take them weeks or months, and then I hear from them, mid-March, and they're like,
never got it done.
Oh, well, I'll do it next year.
Yeah.
So we want to really firmly constrain it. But why did we do the five sessions?
Yeah, so we both teach. You teach Building a Second Brain. I teach Rite of Passage. And what we've seen time and again is that the quality and the focus of people's work time is a lot stronger when people can come together and actually hold each other accountable in a live format. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to be adding this year, brand new, we've never done this before, is a live working session where students can come together and have that time to work in solitude, but recreate that college library feel where everybody is studying for exams together and you're solo but with a community. But then also to have time for office hours, basically, where we can come together, we can share our method and answer any student questions, and every individual student is actually going to piece together their own annual review based off our suggestions, and then through that we have this beautiful blend of the autonomy that you're going to have actually designing your own process, but also not having to go look through all of these annual reviews that other people have done, design it from first principles, and lo and behold, it takes 3 months, it's late March, and you haven't actually finished your annual review.
I think there's something really amazing about that pushback from people. If you think about, you maybe had a guidance counselor in high school or college, but then you graduate college, when ever again does someone actually sit down? Maybe if you're lucky at your job or with your manager, although I think that's pretty rare these days. When does someone look at what you are planning, what you're creating, what you are envisioning, and really, while at the same time being committed to you and caring about you, also being objective and set apart?
Yeah.
It's almost like a mini mastermind or like group coaching thing where we can look and sometimes it's funny, like we'll say, I value this and this is my goal. And you can be like, well, that doesn't match.
Right.
You're saying this matters to you, but you're doing something that's opposite. Or maybe you have two goals that conflict. You want to live a simple life out in the country. You also want to build $1 billion company in the city. Well, it takes just anyone to look at that and just ask a few simple questions, and you can start to unravel some of the deeper motivations behind this.
What I've noticed is that my times of greatest epiphany have been times when things that were ordinarily made implicit were actually made explicit. And I've had that space for feedback. And you see this in when I was actually working, the annual review, when I met with my boss, I remember receiving a lot of feedback that then actually altered the course of my life. And we live in a society now where there's very little face-to-face feedback, and this actually helps you understand where you're strong, where you're weak, and to see with an outsider's perspective what you're doing right now. But Tiago, let's talk a little bit about the logistics for the annual review. Walk me through the weekend and what is going to actually happen on that weekend, and then I'll talk a little bit about what you're going to walk away with.
So really, it's 5 90-minute live Zoom calls that we're going to be conducting, 2 on Saturday, January 4th, 3 on Sunday, which might seem like a lot, but that provides a couple things. First, it's a balance between sessions where we're more presenting. For example, we're going to present to you not just how we do our reviews as a sort of theoretical process, but what we came up with. We're both going to do our actual processes and tell you what we learned, what came out of it, the epiphanies, the realizations. So it's going to be it's quite personal, actually. And then 2 of those sessions are creation sessions. So what we noticed in the past was there's an accountability with live calls. You can put it on your calendar. You can say, I'm going to be there. You can tell your friends and your family, I'm not available from this time to this time. So really the creation sessions are going to be open times for us to all show up together on the same place. We can interact if we want, if we need to, but really you can complete easily your entire review at an absolute minimum, I'd say, in the 3 hours of those 2 sessions. But then as a slightly bigger option, the whole weekend. A weekend is a really good period of time, 2 solid days with an overnight for you to kind of ponder things. And we'll have a step-by-step process, examples, case studies. You're going to design your own review. You're actually going to curate bits and pieces of reviews that you see instead of just taking a sort of a template approach. And then you're going to actually complete it, and then for accountability and just to kind of get other people's thoughts, you're going to end the weekend by sharing it. We have a private Slack channel only for participants of this workshop, so you can share very openly what you come up with, and you'll have access to that indefinitely. So what we actually saw in this past year is people came back throughout the course of the year with like updates, new learnings, new realizations. And so you're going to be part of that community as well. We do everything in community. That's really our driving value.
And on top of that, Tiago and I are going to be here for you the entire weekend. So in that Slack group, any questions that you have, you can answer for us. We're going to be on call. We are here to serve you for that entire weekend. And when it comes to community, it's amazing the friendships that can actually be built through this, because you're going to be talking about things that are deep, that actually cut to the heart of your soul, your personal beliefs, your drives, your ambitions, and with the people that are going to be there. There's going to be some phenomenal friendships formed. So finish off about the logistics and what people should expect as they look forward to this.
Really just expect an experience. Expect a 2-day experience that then has follow-on effects throughout the rest of the year. We'll share more in the link that accompanies this video, but I just really encourage you to think about your year. Think about all the projects you're going to take on, the goals you're going to pursue. Think about how much time is going to pass. That time is going to pass anyway. What would it mean to start that year, to start that period of time with a plan, with a clear list of priorities, even with your values clearly articulated? You might even get to a mission statement that really powerfully guides all the different things you're involved in. There's truly nothing that I know of. There's no practical thing you can do that's more impactful on the trajectory of your life than an annual review. And I really invite you to allow us to help you and to guide you and save you so much time doing trial and error. And join us for the annual review 2020.
January 4th, January 5th, we invite you to spend this time with me and Tiago and to join us to do this really meaningful work and to help you make this year and make this decade exceptional.